Hetzer Tank destroyer. Built at the request of General Guderian, the Hetzer was a light tank destroyer with a low profile and good protection. It used components from the obsolete Czech TNHP tank, and when it proved successful, all TNHP facilities switched to producing Hetzers. German armored forces in World War II created a variety of vehicles by mounting anti-tank guns on the chassis of obsolete tanks. These machines performed better than expected, but were still vulnerable due to their high vehicle profiles and open-topped turrets. Allied bombings took a heavy toll on German production facilities and further increased the need for an easily produced, yet effective light tank destroyer to replace vehicles like the Stug 3 and Marder series. Marder 1, 2, and 3 prototypes of the Jagdpanzer 38 were ready by 1944, and mass production began in April of that year. The Jagdpanzer 38 was covered entirely with sloped armor and possessed a compact form and low silhouette, giving it much improved defensive ability over other self-propelled guns. Armament consisted of a 7.5 cm pack 39 liters/48 gun and a remote-controlled MG34. It featured a wide body to accommodate the 4-man crew, as well as a strengthened lower hull with enlarged wheels, guide rollers, and tracks. Jagdpanzer 38s first entered service in July 1944 and would eventually be assigned to a number of units, including infantry, Panzerjäger and Volksgrenadier divisions. The Jagdpanzer 38 equipped the Panzerjägerabteilungen, tank destroyer battalions, of the infantry divisions, giving them some limited mobile anti-armor capability. BMM and Skoda continually modified and improved the Jagdpanzer 38 during production of the more than 2,800 vehicles built. Owing to the ease of production and high operating rates, the Jagdpanzer 38 came to serve as Germany's main tank destroyer in the latter period of the war, making an important contribution on both the eastern and western fronts. The name Hetzer, German for chaser, was never an official or suggestive name used for this vehicle. It was the designation for a related prototype, the E10. The Skoda factory for a very short period confused the two names in its documentation, and the very first unit equipped with the vehicle thus for a few weeks applied the incorrect name until matters were clarified. However, there exists a briefing paper from Heinz Guderian to Hitler saying that an unofficial name, Hetzer, had spontaneously been coined by the troops. Post-war historians basing themselves on this statement made the name popular in their works. The T in the original designation stands for Tschüss, German for Czech. When Alkit's factory for production of Sturmgeschütz 3 was damaged in a bomb raid on Berlin, on November 26, 1943, it became necessary to find alternatives. Boe Meissneris Maschinenfabrik was considered, but it could not produce the, for that time, heavy chassis of the Sturmgeschütz, and it was decided to base a new design on the Panzer 38T, which they already produced. On 17th of December the design drawings for the new vehicle was presented, and by January 24, 1944 a wooden mock-up was ready. The new Sturmgeschütz was built on the Panzer 38T's widened and lengthened chassis with modified suspension, larger road wheels from the Praga TNHM.A prototype reconnaissance tank, an upgraded engine. The new engine was a 160 PS Praga AC/2 cylinder engine coupled to a Praga Wilson gearbox, 5 forward and 1 reverse gear. The chassis was modified to accommodate a larger gun and thicker armor than the Panzer 38T tank. Its combat weight was 16 metric tons, versus 9.8 tons for the PZ-38T, and it could travel at a maximum speed of 42 km per hour. It had a sloped armor front plate of 60 mm sloped back at 60 degrees from the vertical, equivalent in protection to about 120 mm, 4.7 in, carried a reasonably powerful 75 mm gun, was mechanically reliable, small and easily concealed. It was also cheap to build. The Jagdpanzer 38 succeeded the open-top Marder 3, based on the same chassis. Starting from April 1944, about 2,584 were built until the end of the war. The older Marder 3 Panzerjäger series retained the same vertically sided chassis as Panzer 38T. In the Jagdpanzer 38, The lower hull sides sloped 15 degrees outward to make a roughly hexagonal shape when viewed from front or rear. This increased the available interior space and enabled a fully enclosed casemate-style fighting compartment. Because of the fully enclosed armor, it was 5 tons heavier than the Marder III. To compensate for the increased weight, track width was increased from 293 mm to 350 mm. The initial production Jagdpanzer 38 did not sit even with the ground because the gun, transmission and thicker frontal armor weighed the front down. The leaf springs were strengthened from June 1944, which leveled the vehicle. From May to July 1944, accessibility was improved by adding hatches. The commander's smaller hatch opening to the rear, one in the right rear corner for radiator access and one in the left rear corner for fuel tank access. From August 1944, lighter inner and outer mantlets reduced the weight by 200 kilograms, 440 pounds. These were more conical than the half-cone-shaped initial mantlets. Also from August 1944, new rear idler wheels were introduced that had 8, 6, and 4, not necessarily in that order, lightning holes instead of 12. These simplified the manufacturing process. In September 1944, the front 16 spring leaves were increased in thickness to 9 mm, 0.35 in, per leaf. The rear 16 remained 7 mm thick. Also in September, the side shirtsen's front and rear tips were bent inward to prevent them from catching bushes and being torn off. It was discovered that the driver's periscope housing acted as a shot trap, preventing incoming shells from bouncing off the front glacis. The protruding housing was removed. Instead, the periscope was inserted into vertical cuts to the front armor from October 1944. Also from October 1944, a flame-reducing muffler was introduced, which reduced visibility and backfiring. A head cushion was added to the commander's hatch from October 1944. At the same time, the road wheel rims were riveted instead of bolted to cope with the heavy front, and the necessity to traverse the vehicle to aim. The gear ratio was lowered from 1 to 7.33 to 1 to 8 to reduce the stress on final gears from January 1945. A button-down Jagdpanzer 38 was blind to its right side, since 20 mm, 0.79 in, side armor, same as late model Panzer II's side armor, was adequate to protect the crew only from fairly small caliber guns. It was important to face the threat frontally. Hence, the commander's field of view was planned to be improved by installing a rotating periscope in the Jagdpanzer 38 Star, just as the Sturmgeschütz III and Elefant had evolved from a single pair of periscopes to all-around vision blocks. However, the Jagdpanzer 38 Star came too late to see the action in the field. After the war, Czechoslovakia continued to build the type, version Street I and Street III for training version, about 180 units built, and exported 158 vehicles, version G13, to Switzerland. Most vehicles in today's collections are of Swiss origin. By order of Adolf Hitler in November 1944, a number of Jagdpanzer 38s were refurbished straight from the factory with a Kobe flamethrower and accompanying equipment instead of the normal gun. The flame projector, encased in a metal shield reminiscent of that of a gun barrel, was very prone to damage. Fewer than 50 of these vehicles, designated Flammpanzer 38, were completed before the end of the war, but they were used operationally against Allied forces on the Western Front. Further variants were a Jagdpanzer 38 carrying the 150 mm SIG 33 Habs howitzer, of which 30 were produced before the end of the war, and the Bergpanzer 38, a light recovery vehicle of which 170 were produced. Plans were made to produce other variants, including an assault gun version of the Jagdpanzer 38 carrying a 105 mm Sta 42 main cannon, a version mounting the 7.5 cm KWK 42 L/70 gun from the Panther, and an anti-aircraft variant mounted with a flak turret. The war ended before these proposed models were put into production. Prototypes were also developed for the Jagdpanzer 38 Star. This was a simplified version of the Jagdpanzer 38 and also a step towards the E-10. The design removed the recoil absorber from the main 7.5 cm Pak 39 gun, instead attaching the gun to the chassis, and using the jagged Panzer 38's bulk and suspension to absorb the recoil. 3 prototypes were built, as were 11 pre-production vehicles, of which one was fitted with a diesel engine. Hitler ordered the one prototype committed to combat to be destroyed rather than let it be captured on March 31, 1945. The army requested on 29 April that the gun sights and traversing gear from the 9 pre-production vehicles at the Militz Proving Ground, which it deemed not combat-worthy, be removed and sent back to the factory to allow combat-ready vehicles to be completed. The jagged Panzer 38 fit into the lighter category of German tank destroyers that began with the Panzerjäger I, continued with the Marder series, and ended with the jagged Panzer 38. The 75mm Pak 39L/48 gun of the jagged Panzer 38 was a modified version of the 75mm Stug 40L/48 used in the Stug 3 and Stug 4 assault guns. With this gun, the jagged Panzer 38 was able to destroy nearly all Allied or Soviet tank types in service at long ranges, except heavy tanks, and its fully enclosed armor protection made it a safer vehicle to crew than the open-topped Marder 2 or Marder 3 series. The vehicle could carry 2 different armor-piercing shells for the Pak 39 gun, the PCGR 40 high-velocity tungsten cord round, which fired a 4.1 kilograms, 9.0 pounds, projectile at 930 meters per second that could penetrate 120 millimeters of armor at 500 meters and 97 millimeters at 1000 meters, striking at a 30-degree angle, but was often in scarce supply. And the PCGR 39 armor-piercing, capped, ballistic capped shell, with explosive filler and a tracer element, launching a heavier 6.8 kilograms, 15 pounds, projectile at 750 meters per second that could pierce 106 millimeters, 4.2 in, of armor at 500 meters and 95 millimeters at 1000 meters. Based on tests using PCGR 39 ammunition, with correct range estimation and competent gunnery, a 99% chance of a first shot hit at 500 meters and a 71% chance at 1000 meters was estimated. The vehicle also carried standard high-explosive rounds in the GR 38 HL, C high-explosive anti-tank, heat, round designed with a shaped charge, but this was less effective and accurate against armored targets than AP rounds. The jagged Panzer 38 was one of the most common late-war German tank destroyers. It was available in relatively large numbers and was generally mechanically reliable. Like some other late-war German SPGs, the jagged Panzer 38 mounted a remote control machine gun mount that could be fired from within the vehicle. This proved popular with crews, though to reload the gun, a crew member needed to expose himself to enemy fire. The vehicle's small size made it easier to conceal than larger vehicles. A self-propelled gun such as this was not intended for a mobile, meeting engagement or the typical Wehrmacht blitzkrieg style of warfare. Instead, a light self-propelled gun like the jagged Panzer 38 excelled when emplaced along predetermined lines of sight where the enemy was expected to approach and when used in defensive positions to support a prepared ambush. The jagged Panzer 38 is similar in its dimensions and vertical profile to the minuscule and undergun Panzer II, a pre-war tank. However, by 1944, the majority of tanks were much larger and heavier. A jagged Panzer 38 waiting motionless in an ambush position was a much smaller target to detect and hit than many other armored fighting vehicles of the time. Its main failings were comparatively thin side armor, limited ammunition storage, poor gun traverse, and a poor internal layout that made operating the vehicle difficult, as well as leaf springs and drive wheels that were prone to failure due to the increased weight. Using the jagged Panzer 38 and similar vehicles according to a defensive doctrine would offset some of the disadvantages of poor side armor and limited gun traverse.